Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, a special meeting of City Council has wrapped, and we have the latest on the BIA battle. Plus, education workers say they are struggling as their union continues to negotiate a new deal with the province. New employment services for our region announced by the province today. The goal is to support those on social assistance. And we've told you about how much electric vehicles can cost you up front. Tonight, we'll look at some of the financial positives down the road. Council has officially taken over all 9 business improvement associations in Windsor. It was a controversial and unprecedented decision they made privately last week, but now it is official. And the CBC's Jason Vio joins us live with the latest from City Hall. Jason, this special meeting on the BIA just wrapped up. What can you tell us?
Yeah, within the last hour inside of council chambers here, they spent about 20 minutes, though, discussing the core issue of what they decided in camera last week and ratified that in a public session. And essentially, for the next 50 days, council will be overseeing all 9 BIAs. So any sort of funding requests coming from these BIAs in terms of things they want to do for those areas will need to funnel through council. I mean, the downtown BIA, for example, has a budget of $700,000, so certainly a lot of planning still going on. But the mayor did say that this step needed to be taken in order to make things more transparent. Council has never taken a step like this before. And the Auditor General, we learned today, will also be involved. They'll be auditing the BIAs in some fashion, but really the full scope of what they'll be looking for and what they'll be looking at, that will be determined at a future meeting. But those BIAs are basically tasked with promoting some of the region's historic neighborhoods like Sandwich Town, Ford City, the downtown being the biggest one, and they attract business and people to those areas. Today, Council also gave its Chief Administrative Officer the ability to approve small BIA funding requests, but anything significant or new will still need to go through Council. Here's a bit more from the Mayor explaining why Council took this drastic step.
This is all about putting baseline governance in place, financial rules in place that, talk about reporting structures so that this is open and transparent to the people who are paying the bill, who are funding the BIAs. This is all about openness and transparency and shining the light to make sure that it's well understood how they're operated, how they're governed, how elections happen, how membership is decided, so that no one is in the dark on this.
Jason, there's another issue at play here that sparked a complaint, and that's that the decision was made in private.
That's right. This decision really caught a lot of people off guard, including the BIAs. They had no notice that this was being discussed in camera last week, no opportunity to kind of appear before council to give their take and their opinion on what the implications would be for this. So we did, though, hear from one BIA today. Only one spoke at this special meeting of council, and that was the Downtown Windsor Business Improvement Association. And they did voice some concerns about documents that the city published in its agenda in advance of this meeting that they say contained confidential information that could pose a risk to the DWBIA, for example, or harm their reputation in different ways. And the city's clerk did acknowledge that concern and say going forward he will ask the BIAs before these types of meetings what they consider to be confidential and not want to get out there. Now, I did also ask the city's clerk today and want to get a better understanding about why council held this decision or made this decision behind closed doors in the first place. And he did say it was because that specific board member names were being discussed during that meeting. But really the core issue here is council taking over temporarily control of the BIAs. Here's a bit more of what he had to say.
Again, I can't comment on what happened behind closed doors. There could be also legal issues that were raised, a whole sort of issues that are part of the in-camera criteria for that discussion. I cannot divulge that information. However, again, that's just a committee of council. That still has to go behind the form of a committee report in open session, which is what has happened.
Now, the mayor wasn't available to speak after the special meeting today, but he did say during the meeting that some BIAs are very opposed to what they're doing, but others are thankful for the actions that they've taken and are wondering why it didn't happen sooner. So, Katerina, we'll have to wait and see how this really all plays out over the next 50 days.
Definitely. Thanks for this, Jason. That's CBC's Jason Vio live from City Hall tonight. Education workers at the public school board are negotiating a new deal with the province, and some say they have had enough of what they consider poor treatment by the government. The CBC's TJ Deer reports.
Fran Van Gent has worked for the local public school board for 20 years, but if she had her time again, she says she might choose to enter another field.
The knowledge of the way that the job has changed, the knowledge that the somewhat disrespect for the position has changed, the knowledge that the government would make a decision to stop an increase in pay to someone who definitely meets the needs, the critical needs of the students here at school, I maybe would have taken a different job.
A letter sent from the chairperson of the public board to Education Minister Stephen Lecce says educational assistants and early childhood educators are woefully underpaid. According to a local union representative, their average pay is in the range of $35,000 to $39,000 a year, with pension and benefits included. The union rep says workers often have to take at least one more job. He says some workers have to use food banks to put food on the table.
They shop to survive right now, to get by, because truly their wage compared to their workload it's truly astronomical.
The letter also says the gap in pay compared to their colleagues in similar positions outside the public board has resulted in retention issues.
We're anywhere between, 2 to 5 resignations each week, or people that come into the industry now and they do the job for 2 or 3 weeks, then they quit.
OSSTF is currently negotiating a new deal with the province. While the union's vice president declined to tell CBC News their demands, she says they're based on a lack of investment in public education from the Ford government and previous provincial governments.
What we are starting to see now after a global pandemic are the consequences of that lack of investment. The Financial Accountability Officer just came out last week and indicated but by the end of 24-25, this government will have knowingly underspent publicly funded education by $1.1 billion.
A spokesperson for the Ministry of Education told CBC News that education funding is at a record level and that in recent years more than 7,000 workers have been hired. The spokesperson also said the same deal they signed with CUPE last fall is also available to OSSTF. The two sides are scheduled to meet on March 27th to continue negotiations. TJ Deer, CBC News, Windsor.
The Ford government is expanding employment services to municipalities across southern Ontario, and Windsor is one of them. The program is aimed at residents who are on social assistance and those in the criminal justice system to help them find jobs.
This will help more people who are able to work to find better jobs, because good jobs change everything. They fulfill dreams and help people live purpose-driven lives. They create a brighter future for everyone. They are vital to making our province one that works for everyone.
Among the services offered, free training for workers. The government's services will also include rent support and childcare for those who are in training. Items such as work boots, tools, uniforms, and a bus pass for workers to get to their first shift will also be provided. Along with resume and interview workshops, the province will roll out the services through Employment Ontario partners, and one of those partners is the UHC Hub of Opportunities.
People are not able to access training because maybe they don't have childcare. So childcare is really, really important. So work boots, anything that we can help clients with to make it easier for them is going to be helpful. So once again, we're looking forward to working with the City of Windsor and Workforce Essex to help those most vulnerable in our community. For those that need help, we're here to help them.
The ministry says Employment Ontario has a yearly budget of around $1 billion. Workforce Windsor Essex says it's hoping to roll out the new services by January of next year. Last month, we dug into the real cost of electric vehicles, looking at some of the high price tags and how some auto experts say EVs aren't affordable for the average consumer. But some EV owners say once you've made the purchase, the cost savings are significant. So I got behind the wheel of one to learn more.
Now, if you want to do a loop around that way, we can do that, and then it gives you a chance to go a little bit faster. You know, the first thing I always tell people, about getting an EV or driving an EV is the driving experience is so great, right? They're a lot of fun to drive.
But it's not just the drive. Sean Hart is a big fan of the financial benefits.
Sometimes the upfront cost might be a little bit high, but the operating costs are really, really low, especially when you take into account the cost of fuel, right, compared to charging with electricity. Just really affordable cars to own.
But that initial price point can still be hefty. According to the Canadian Automobile Association, the average price of an EV is just over $83,000, much higher than the Canadian industry averages for both new and used vehicles.
I've heard this a lot talking to people is they think that an electric car is some really expensive thing like $80,000 or $100,000, right? And there are cars like that, but they're not all like that.
In his case, Hart has two EVs, the 2023 Chevy Bolt. With add-ons included and federal subsidy subtracted, he purchased it new for about $38,000. He also owns the 2020 Kia Niro, purchased used last year for about $50,000.
We drive somewhere around 40,000 kilometers in a year, and I was looking at the price of gas for a normal car, and that could be around $7,000 in a year just on gas. When you compare that to like how much electricity I use, it's about $1,000 in electricity. So it's quite significant, right? In a year, you could be saving for us. We could be saving like $6,000.
That's for both cars. He adds maintenance costs are lower, and the need for maintenance isn't as frequent as a gas car, for things like oil changes, for example.
So for me, what I find is it's actually cheaper for me to be driving, like to buy an electric car that might be a bit more expensive up front, but it's going to save me like over the years, right?
Meanwhile, there appears to be a growing commitment from some industry players to make EVs more affordable on the whole. Last week, Tesla promised to cut EV production costs by half, and on Monday, it cut prices on its two most expensive American vehicles, the Model S and Model X, by 4 to 9%. Back in January, Tesla had cut some prices by as much as 20%. And then Ford followed suit, bringing its new Mustang Mach-E price tag down by about $5,900. The NDP's critic for Northern Development and Indigenous and Treaty Relations is raising concerns about the plan to build a road to the Ring of Fire. That's northeast of Thunder Bay. The provincial government says the plan was brought forth by two First Nations in the area, but the NDP says at least one Northern chief was not consulted. It led to this exchange during question period.
The people of the Skandaga have not given Ontario consent to build a mining road on its traditional and treaty land.
The Corridor to Prosperity is an opportunity for all Indigenous communities in that area to unleash new health, social, and economic benefits, bring in better forms of energy.
Members of the Webekwe First Nation and Martin Falls First Nation designed the plan, which was announced by the province this week. The Ring of Fire region is said to be rich in critical minerals. The chief for Nishkantaga First Nation says nothing will go through the area without his consent.
I feel like my rights is being trampled on. And there has been no consultation or accommodation to my First Nation to cross the Athabasca River. We will do whatever it takes, whatever means necessary, to make sure that the Skandaga First Nation membership decide what goes on in their lands. That's a message.
The chief says he has seen many mining operations in the north that don't benefit the people who live there. The province has made long-standing promises to develop and mine the area. A live look outside. Colette will be here after the break to tell us about the snow that's on the way. Stay with us. Ever wondered how a young hockey player makes it to the NHL? This is how it starts. A talented kid, a devoted parent, and a cause that is greater than love of the game. As CBC's Louise Big Eagle finds out, it's the stuff that dreams are made of.
Ready, bro? Incoming!
This is how Dakota Kuntz takes practice shots on his son trip. They live at Buffalo Pound Lake, north of Moose Jaw, and built an outdoor rink in their front yard. And this is just one way Dakota gets down to it.
My son absolutely loves hockey, and we just wanted to make it closer to home, so we decided to have a rink on the lake because it's just so close.
11-year-old Tripp is an avid goalie, and he likes to make his entrance this way. He spends hours on their homemade rink, after school, and on the weekend.
Me and my dad decided to make a rink for, so people can come out and have fun, because there's not a rink out here, and it's quite far to Moose Jaw, and there's lots of people that like hockey out here, and it's Saskatchewan and Canada, favorite sport.
The father and son have built a rink every winter for several years, and each time it gets more elaborate. They even made a small Zamboni from a rain barrel.
Favorite part about this rink is the GT track that leads down to it, the ice trail that leads down to it that has a fire pit for warming up. The mini stick rink is phenomenal. I'll be building that every year. It's so much fun. The ice shack to warm up in and to fish from is super fun.
Tripp loves when people fire pucks at him from up above.
They bounce a lot, so they get pretty hyped if they score one, but they almost never do.
Getting out on the ice is helping the family through a tough time. Dakota's mother recently passed away from a brain injury.
I'm really gonna push to build an outdoor rink for the community, so it's up in the trees and sheltered from the weather. And I want to name it after my mom that just passed away, and also call it the Rink of Dreams, because that is where dreams are made.
Dreams and memories of hours together on the rink they built. Louise Big Eagle, CBC News, Buffalo Pound.
Colette Kennedy is here now for a look at our weather forecast. Colette, I'm feeling a little bit like it's deja vu because it's a Thursday, we're looking at a Friday, and again talking about snow.
I know, what's with this pattern, right?
Yeah.
In time for the weekend, and for many, of course, with March break too, it can have an impact on those travel plans if you were trying to get away early. So we are in a winter weather travel advisory, and in general, I'll show you some detail, but it's around 10 to 15 centimeters of snow here into southwestern Ontario. And there's a snowfall warning, but that's over towards the west end of Lake Ontario because of the winds. There'll likely be some lake enhancement there around Hamilton and stretching into the Niagara region if you had planned to be traveling in that direction. Tomorrow, not your best travel day on the roads, as this will be coming in overnight tonight, but close to tomorrow morning. So the current temperatures with Goderich and Sarnia already at the freezing mark, London as well. We're sitting just above, and that's going to be really important for tomorrow. I've got our daytime high at 0. Now we could pop up for a time up to 1 and then see a little bit more of a slushy snow or it mixing a bit. Otherwise, though, I really see this as a snowfall event because the system is tracking south of us. Overnight temperatures for tonight in terms of the low around -1 to -2, and so then it's almost nearly steady there, just comes up a bit through the daytime hours tomorrow. Seeing some of that increase in cloudiness, but we really have to broaden our perspective if we want to see the system. So there it is around 3 a.m., just trickling in, but by about 6, we'll definitely have that. So the morning commute, there'll be some slick roadways. And then we've got to factor the winds in here, too. And by the way, 4 p.m. it's still happening, but notice we're on the western edge of it, and it's moving through. So improvement into the evening on Friday. You'll be finding just some flurries flying then, and then kind of getting into a mix of sun and cloud as we head into Saturday. So snowfall potential, this is one particular model, but I'm sort of feeling like I like what this one is doing in terms of what I'm seeing. So puts us, though, right in that range, 15 for Chatham-Kent, in fact, and it would be over towards Hamilton before we'd see maybe those 20 centimeters. That's the potential there. Even locally, a few areas could get more than that. So a look at those winds and how they'll be blustery, especially just north of the lake. So watch out for that, blowing the snow around too. And also just a note, if you are traveling south, New York State, Pennsylvania, hey, they're going to have some poor road conditions too, because it's such a broad system that we're looking at here. So there's that 0 I was mentioning that I have us at for the daytime high. It does get a little milder, not much, a little as we go into the weekend. Another system, Katerina, at the beginning of the week, but I think that one's probably much lighter in terms of the snowfall.
Okay, good to know. Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, some poetry from Windsor's newest poet laureate. Stay with us. The federal government is introducing a bill that would allow Canadian aid agencies to deliver much-needed help to Afghanistan. Under the current law, charities and NGOs could be criminally prosecuted for their work in the country. The Taliban government is considered a terrorist organization, so aid agencies working there would have been breaking the law. CBC's Marina von Stackelberg has this report.
Since the Taliban took control over a year and a half ago, the humanitarian situation in Afghanistan has gotten worse. 20 million people now face acute hunger. But Canadian charities who want to provide desperately needed aid have been held back by Canada's laws.
We have not been able to deliver aid, so it couldn't be more critical, but we need to make sure that we can get this money there as soon as possible. This is also critical because Canada has been committed to Afghanistan for decades now.
It's against the law in Canada to fund a terrorist organization, but the Taliban has also taken over as the government in Afghanistan. Buying supplies, renting an apartment, applying for visas come with taxes that go to the Taliban. New legislation would allow Ottawa to grant Canadian NGOs special authorizations. It will exempt them to work in terrorist-occupied areas, including Afghanistan, without risk of breaking Canada's law.
Stringent measures to prevent any financing from reaching terrorist groups like the Taliban will remain in place. But we will not let these laws stand in the way of doing the right thing.
But Canada has been criticized for being slow to offer NGOs this exemption when others have.
Well, I can speak to the other organizations that World Vision has funding from, whether it's the US, Australia, Germany, UK, and others. Canada certainly is the last to join that group of providing a path forward around the anti-terrorism legislation.
The changes to the criminal code will first need to pass Parliament. Ottawa has no timelines on how long that could take.
Civil society, NGOs complained about it. The government has responded. It would have been nice if it could have happened last year, but it's happening now. And Afghans are going to need this help from Canada in the years ahead.
Charities will have to pass a security review to make sure they don't have any ties to terrorist organizations. And their exemption could be revoked at any time. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
We want to leave you tonight with a dose of poetry. Windsor's newest poet laureate was on our morning show today. Here's Peter Rostovic with an original piece.
So I wrote this poem in honor of the three of you. It's called Serial Thriller.
Oh, okay.
Serial Thriller for the Radio 1 Wise Guys. Dedicated.
We should copyright that.
The lineup on the kitchen table, a waiting bowl and spoon, the usual suspects, the cardboard boxes standing, anticipating the decision, the choice, the victor. Crackling crisp sweet sensations, fruit-laden bursts of crunchy joy, or cheery-eyed grain grit tasty treat, ready to wallow in wondrous milk-splashed splendor, or not. But this daily diversion, colorful cartoon crazies deflecting attention, the packaging replete with a jillion words, needed reading, nutrients and nourishment, fortified fiber fix, vitamin A, B12, D, XYZ, niacin, riboflavin, contests and competitions, free things to win, company employees and their families ineligible, and collectibles found inside, exhilaration overflowing, like the content spilling onto the floor. All this learning and yearning, adventures and advertising, the magic of marketing. The school bell will just have to wait.
Wow, bravo.
That is awesome. That is it for CBC Windsor News. I will be away tomorrow and next week, but Jason Villa will be here in my place. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for watching.